Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Murder, where I'll be talking about and reviewing an episode of Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, or Jonathan Creek. Today I'm looking at Jonathan Creek, Danse Macabre, or as I like to call it, that time Jonathan Creek made me scared of garages. We begin the episode with credits backed by a piece of music for which the episode is named, before landing on Maddie dressed as Where's Wally, ignoring her alarms before she's forced to get up due to someone at her door. It's Reverend Peter Davison, who's gotten lost looking for his TARDIS, who invites himself in to talk to her about a murder. He says someone was offed at his home the previous night, before the killer impossibly vanished into thin air.
Some miracles you don't want to believe in.
Hey, a Doctor Who reference! He mentions the victim is Emma Lazarus, the Stephen King of this universe, and also his mother-in-law, and tells the story of how him and his wife Lorna were visited by Emma, her second husband Tom, and their bodyguard Mr. Drucker. Emma smack-talked God in front of Stephen, upsetting him, and causing him to miss out on last night's Halloween celebrations, where the others went out for a costume party, only to return because Emma had a headache. They pass a man in the storm who has been lurking about, who Drucker thinks is a stalker, but Emma brushes it off and they pose for a picture. As Drucker parks the car, a skeleton goes to see Emma and shoots her dead, causing Lorna to run upstairs where she's held hostage and subsequently knocked out by the killer, who orders Drucker to bring the car around. And the skeleton's distorted voice was provided by creator of the show, David Renwick. Drucker gets the car out of the garage, calling the police in the process. But with Tom stumbling out as a distraction, Drucker grabs his gun, shooting out the tyres as sirens are heard, forcing the killer and his hostage into the garage where they close the door. The police inspect and surround the garage, and after waiting 15 minutes to see if the killer will surrender, they open the door only to find the skeleton has disappeared entirely. Lorna wakes up fine, and Stephen thinks everyone is losing their minds. Jonathan is not impressed by the story.
Tell him to bugger off and stop sniffing the nail polish.
Because he's been out all night with Adam, played now by Stuart Milligan, after he was portrayed by Anthony Head in the pilot, who had to give up the role due to commitment to a little show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Adam has brought a girl home which won't sit well with his wife, who unexpectedly comes home, forcing Jonathan to pretend that the girl is with him. Now without her partner, Maddie investigates the garage alone, discovering empty paint cans and a hacksaw, and interviews Lorna, who is no help whatsoever. She doesn't remember anything or know who the killer is, so Tom takes her away, leaving Maddie stumped. Mr. Drucker rocks up and says the killer is her stalker, while Tom says he doesn't remember anything after he was knocked out. And Maddie discovers that Emma was seeing a hypnotherapist called Gary Lobo, who was helping her recount her many past lives. Maddie relays everything to Jonathan, who says she needs to think outside the box, before showing her a model of one of Adam's latest tricks. Man, I love it when Jonathan model makes, and then they talk about poo for some reason. Jonathan is interested in the empty paint cans, and Maddie visits Lobo, who shoves her in a tank of whatever and ducks her under, so she decides to go to dinner with him, which kind of leads nowhere, except he says he had a feeling that Emma knew she was going to die. Jonathan tells Maddie he knows how the skeleton got out of the garage based on what she told him, but she doesn't stick around for answers after bathtub Bridget stops by to say hello. Adam tells him that Bridget is blackmailing him, wanting to sing in his show, so he orders Jonathan to pay her off, but she's not interested because she just really wants to sing, and mentions her missing shoes, which sparks Jonathan's patented confused face. Lorna wakes up in the night hearing noises and finds the front door open, before discovering Emma's head is no longer attached to her body. So Stephen calls Maddie back in with Jonathan, who pokes around the garage. They want to speak to Lorna, but she's off visiting an elderly neighbour, Mr. Snetterton, who has sadly passed away. Lorna says he told her that he'd seen a skeleton run through his garden the night of the murder, and later Jonathan encourages Maddie to work out the mystery for herself. At first she thinks it's impossible for the skeleton to have gotten out, until...
How many people walked into that garage?
2.
Walked into that garage?
1.
And it suddenly twigs what happened.
You are jesting.
The killer faked knocking out Lorna, and when Drucker left to get the car, Lorna put on the skeleton costume and dressed a dummy as herself before taking it outside. When the garage door closed, Lorna took off the costume, cut up the dummy and stashed it in the paint tins before getting her costume back on. The following day, she disposed of the evidence, but Jonathan is unsure of the identity of the killer, seeing as the skeleton costume included booties. So where did his original shoes go? Maddie thinks it's going to be difficult to prove, but Jonathan has a plan that involves Mr. Snetterton's doctor, so they confront Laura after Emma's funeral, because Mr. Snetterton had just been in for surgery on his vocal cords, so he couldn't actually speak, and Lorna breaks down. Maddie identifies the killer as Tom, who looks shocked, but quickly confesses, although admits that the garage wasn't part of the original plan. A plan, it turns out, that was concocted by Emma Lazarus.
Which is where we get into a real ethical nightmare, isn't it, Mr. Teresi, when we talk about euthanasia.
Emma was in for a long, drawn-out death due to a brain tumour, presumably, so she came up with the plan to go out quickly and in style. But Stephen is not impressed, while Drucker wants to know where the hell Emma's head went. Good question. The stalker stole it, and no goddamn way he got that through airport security. I am calling bullshit on that one. Adam, Maddie and Jonathan go out to dinner when Bridget turns up, so Maddie convinces her to take the money. Alright, this episode is the most iconic one in the whole show, and I challenge anyone who grew up with this series not to immediately name The Skeleton in the Garage as the first episode they think of. I was absolutely stumped as a kid. I had no idea how the hell it could have been pulled off. And it really is a testament to David Renwick that he was able to come up with 32 different elaborate lock room concepts like this one. As iconic as this episode is, it's not without its faults. First of all, the story is being recounted to Maddie by someone who wasn't even there. So while the others would have told him what happened, it wouldn't have been in such detail. And also, Lorna caught a very lucky break when she was forced into the garage. Not only because Drucker didn't notice the half-foot height difference between the two skeletons and the body type difference, but also the police didn't immediately open the garage upon arrival, giving her time to cut up the dummy with a hacksaw, literally the only tool in the garage for some reason, and put it all in a dozen empty paint cans that any normal person would have thrown away. Yeah, so if you look too closely at it, it doesn't really hold up. But it's still super iconic and a great example of what this show is all about. We also get one of the instances where Maddie is left to solve the crime herself initially, as Jonathan isn't interested. But there isn't any apparent reason why he suddenly decided to help. But it does show how brilliantly his mind works because he's able to work out what happened based entirely on what Maddie had told him. There were a couple of side plots that weren't really necessary, like Bathtub Bridget's blackmail bonanza and Mr. Snetterton and his warty vocal cords, but I guess you gotta pad the runtime somehow. We have a single victim, Emma Lazarus, who was shot by our killer, Tom Teresi, who almost got away with it but was caught due to his accomplice, Lorna Claythorne, who carried out Emma's wishes and ended her suffering early. So there you have it. That was Danse Macabre. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot, or consider subscribing if you want more videos like this one. Alternatively, feel free to check out my other YouTube channels, Jane Talks Real, Jane Plays Games Badly, and Jane Talks Trek. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and keep an eye out for clues.